Dennis Gates has already reeled in an interesting recruit on his first week on the job, but you know what? I'm starting to feel a little pessimistic about Trevon Brazile. Also, some more juice in the orange that is the Missouri spring football game. All this and more coming up right now on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters. I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. Currently going about, 77 miles an hour westbound down I-70. Yes, love is in the air, ladies and gentlemen. One of my good friends is getting married this evening, but you know what? There's love in the air as well on the Missouri basketball team because I'm starting to fall in love with Dennis Gates. I like everything I've seen so far from this guy, including, hey, we've reeled in a recruit already. Boy, if I were Dennis Gates, I think, you know what? I'm going to take some time off. I think I've earned it. Not this guy. That's why he's a Division I head coach, and frankly, I'm not. But you know what? This guy, he's brought him in, according to a lot of people out there, JUCOrecruiting.com, Mohammed Diarra, 6'10", 215-pound player from Paris, France originally, but just the last couple years playing his college ball at Gardner City, Community College in Kansas. A pretty interesting player, man. Again, 6'10", 215, and he's got some skills, too. He can put the ball on the floor, seems to have some good passing ability, can knock down some shots. Really just a very intriguing prospect for sure, and an incredible amount of improvement, too. Just from his freshman year, he averaged about 8 points, 4 rebounds, blocked 35 shots as a freshman. Well, look at his sophomore season, averaging nearly 18 points, 13 rebounds a game, and well about doubled his shot blocking output. So obviously a guy who's got some really intriguing skills that if you're a Missouri fan, hey, we need some guys with some high athletic upside, hopefully some big men who can knock down some shots. Frankly, anybody who can knock down some shots. This seems like a really good start. Now, you look at his offer list. We're not going to go crazy here. You hear the number one guy in community college. Well, first of all, what exactly does that mean? Sometimes that can mean a really, really good player. Hey, wasn't Ricardo Ratliff the number one community college player at one point about 10 years ago? Well, he turned out to be a pretty good one. Obviously, his senior year, he was tremendous for the Tigers. If you look at his offer list in terms of Mohammed Diarra, that is, Mississippi State, Iona, of course, coached by Rick Pitino. He was in on him as well. Fresno State, another Division I program that apparently offered this guy as well. But again, according to a bunch of guys you look at, according to JUCOrecruiting.com, the number one overall recruit or overall transfer available from the junior college ranks, and also a guy who very well could be the junior college player of the year. So, hey, that's a pretty darn good start in week one if you're Dennis Gates. Now, on the other side of the equation, speaking of guys who are about 6'10" and have a lot of intriguing ability, well, Trevon Brazile certainly fits that bill. And to me, he's a guy you don't want to lose, but unfortunately, according to StockRisers.com, the founder, I should say, of StockRisers.com, Jake Weingarten, he's hearing from some big-time named schools, including Kentucky, Michigan State, many others. So, unfortunately, I'm starting to feel a little bit worried about Trevon Brazile. Hopefully, Missouri can keep him in the fold. Hopefully, Dennis Gates can sell him once again because, again, he was one of the 3 scholarship offers, Division I offers that Brazile had out of high school, was from Dennis Gates and Cleveland State. But, frankly, I'm just starting to feel a little bit less optimistic about that one. Now, one reason this signing by Missouri of Mohammed Diarra and Dennis Gates should give all of us a lot of reason for optimism is that Gates doesn't even have his full staff in place yet, right? I mean, my goodness, imagine what he can do when he actually gets the guys he wants along his right hand, right? So apparently now Missouri, the salary is confirmed to be what was suspected, earlier this week, about 6 years. Total value, $16 million. So you're talking about $2.5 million average annual value. Very competitive with the rest of the conference. And to me, just as important, if not more important, a little under a $1 million pool for his 3 assistants, which definitely isn't at the top of the league with Alabama perhaps, but absolutely nothing to complain about here. It's very competitive with a lot of the teams in the rest of the league. So to me, if you're a Missouri basketball fan, so far I'm getting really good vibes from this Gates hire by Desiree Reed-Francois. There's really nothing to complain about so far. Again, long way to go. Still need a lot of players on this squad, a lot of resets here. Need a ball handler, need a shooter. Be nice to get Brazile back. Hey, how about Aiden Shaw too? So Dennis Gates going to be earning his money very quickly the next few weeks. And speaking of some guys, other players that Dennis Gates has reached out to already, well, would you believe that one of them is former Missouri and LSU guard Xavier Pinson? Yes, he's in the transfer portal once again. Apparently, Pinson has heard from Kentucky, Michigan State, Mizzou, Xavier, Arizona State, among several others. You know what? We can laugh about this all we want, right? And it is kind of amusing. This is college basketball in 2022. But let's be real. We would have taken Xavier Pinson in a hot second this past season. We needed a ball handler. We needed somebody who could not only break down a defense off the dribble, but actually do something with it when they get there. Unfortunately, we saw with Caleb Brown too many times, he could sometimes break it down and get into the middle of the defense, but when it came to actually scoring, he didn't know what to do with it. So regardless, whether it's Pinson or not, I can't really see that happening. I think that's more of a, hey, Missouri reached out to him. This is a list of everybody. Okay, whatever. I can't really see that one happening. That seems a little bit bizarre to me. But other guys who Missouri has been reportedly in contact with so far, Eric Stevenson from South Carolina, Cameron Winter from Drexel, Fardaws Amak, easier for me to say, from Utah Valley, and also Noah Carter from Northern Iowa. So, and, you know, those are probably not exactly household names to you all or me for that matter, but if you really look at the rankings of guys who do follow this stuff closely for a living, these are some pretty high-level transfers that Gates is going after. So he's definitely not settling early in this process. So the odds of Missouri really turning around this roster in a positive way this offseason are pretty high at this point. So let's just see what happens, and hopefully there'll be plenty more reasons to get excited about this program going forward. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, March Madness is underway, and that means, obviously, you know what's happening in your pool. So you know what? Let's talk about next year. Yes, at runyourpool.com, you know that you want the best experience, so you got to go with Run Your Pool, not the usual experience like all that you get at ESPN or CBS, or frankly the lack of what you get at ESPN or CBS. Go for the best experience, get the most intel, the best options to edit your scoring, and the most different types of games, from Survivor to Pick X. Listen, whether it's your friends, your family, your office pool, you got to go to Run Your Pool. And we at the Locked On Podcast Network did just that this past March Madness. So guess what? Go to runyourpool.com/lockedon, and while you're there, create your own pool for your friends or family. Enter Pure Madness at checkout for $10 off your custom pool. All the rules and details will be available there. That's runyourpool.com/lockedon for your chance to win a cash prize up to $1,800. We look forward to seeing you there. And by Built Bar. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we're hurtling down the highway, and you know what that means. It's time for me to get a little bit of a base for this wedding. I don't want to just come in hot, throwing 80 miles an hour and getting way too many drinks early and making a fool out of myself. So you know what? Let's get a Built Bar in the old belly, get a base. It's the best protein bar ever made. It tastes incredible. They're all covered in 100% real chocolate. They're low calorie, high protein, low sugar, low carb. It's got everything you could possibly want. How could I need to sell it any better than that? Well, here's how. They have all the flavors you could want, too. Mint brownie, coconut almond. Yes, it's all there at Built.com. Just use the promo code LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off your order. Once again, promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Thanks for making Locked On Mizzou your first listen on this Friday. And, hey, why don't you make your second listen Locked On Chiefs with those fellows are going to tell you all about the Tyreek Hill trade. To be honest, I was pretty bummed out about it yesterday, but after listening to Locked On Chiefs, those guys talked me off the ledge a little bit. So you know what? I think they'll do the same for you if you're a Chiefs fan. But you know what? Let's talk some Tiger football really quickly. And you know, the thing about the black and gold game, while obviously there was much to look forward to with the Missouri offense, not much to write home with the defense. And there's a couple obvious reasons for that. Number one, you had a ton of guys, important players, sitting out that game, including Trajan Jeffcoat, Martez Manuel, Ennis Rakestraw, Chad Bailey, who, by the way, Chad Bailey on the sidelines, even though he wasn't wearing shoulder pads, could have fooled me. He sure fills out a football uniform. My goodness. But not only were there just, maybe half your most important defensive players sat out that game, if not more, other than probably Isaiah McGuire really was the most notable guy out there. You didn't see a single blitz the entire game that I noticed. It was all rush 4, either cover 2, cover 3, maybe some man stuff on occasion. Just the most basic concepts you could possibly imagine. So if the defense didn't show much, let's not panic, because there's absolutely no reason to whatsoever. Also, Missouri's Pro Day is happening today. Among the participants, obviously your top two participants are Tyler Beatty and Caleb Evans, of course, the corner transfer from Tulsa. Those are the two guys who I think have the best chance to get drafted. Perhaps Kiki Chisholm, perhaps Case Cook, Akil Byers. Maybe those guys have an outside shot. Michael Maietti. Certainly some of those names are going to get a shot as free agents, I do believe. But I think going forward, an interesting guy in the NFL to me has got to be Harrison Mevis, right? And this is just a quick observation I had from the spring game. We all know what Mevis can do as a place kicker, but if he's going to really make it in the NFL, he needs to be able to boot that ball through the end zone. And so far, so good at the spring game. He hasn't had any opportunities that I can remember his first 2 seasons to show off that kickoff leg because, well, Sean Ketting has obviously done an excellent job for Missouri in that role. He's been one of the absolute best in the country. So I just thought it was interesting on a game that didn't seem like it was particularly wind-aided or anything like that Mevis, the times I noticed, showed that he could boot the ball back through the end zone. By the way, one thing that I noticed at the spring game that's something I've noticed for years now, and this goes back to at least the Kelly Bryant era, the 2019 season. So 3 seasons now. This is before the Eli Drinkwitz era. But Missouri has gotten into the clap, as I like to call it. No, not the sexually transmitted disease, but the idea that, okay, we're not going to have a snap count. We're not going to say hud, hike. We're just going to clap, and then timing-wise, well, then they'll get us the ball back. I don't really understand this logic. Why does that not help you as a defensive end, as a defensive player, time the snap? Somebody's got to figure that one out for me. Is that just easier for the offense? Because this seems to be a trend in college football. I don't see it at the NFL level. Somebody please explain to me the clap. And coming up with the changing landscape in college basketball has become a lot of changes in coaching as well. Obviously, this is going to be Mike Krzyzewski's last season. Well, he advanced on last night, and Gonzaga is out. And guess what? Hey, over at BetOnline, your boy, John Miller, told you to take Duke plus 375 to win the region just a few days ago. And you know what? You're feeling pretty good if you took my advice right now, aren't you? So coming up, we're going to talk about those coaches. But obviously, over at BetOnline, that's the best place to get the best odds, the latest props. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your sports betting needs and info, whether it is college basketball, NBA hoops, the NFL. You're already wanting to lay down some futures bets on the Miami Dolphins. Well, you know what? Nuts to you. I'm not buying into that one. But, of course, baseball is heating up. MMA is all year round. Boxing, whatever you're into, we've got you covered at BetOnline, where the game starts. So if you can honestly put yourself in Mike Krzyzewski's shoes as a guy who's been around college basketball for, my goodness, 50 years now or something like that. If this whole new world of transfers and name, image, and likeness and all this stuff is in a guy who's frankly done it all, seen it all, been there, done it, all that stuff, well, if he can kind of look around at the landscape and say, you know what, this is probably it for me. I'm going to give one more run at it and say goodbye. Well, he's certainly not alone. We know Roy Williams retired last year. Can John Calipari be too far behind after bowing out of the first round against St. Peter's? And frankly, Kentucky fans, there's a decent amount of them who are starting to get impatient with him. Is Jim Boeheim going to stick around forever? The point is, everybody gets old, right? Father Time is undefeated, and that's the deal. Even Nick Saban eventually is going to stop winning national championships at Alabama. So the obvious question is, with all these titans of old college basketball fading off into the distance, riding off into the sunset, well, who's next? And my question would be, why not Missouri and Dennis Gates? And while obviously Missouri has ran into some really tough times the last few seasons, and it's easy to be dismissive of what I just said, and I'm sure some of you are probably laughing into your podcast machines as we speak. But guess what? If I would have told you 5 to 10 years ago that Alabama and Auburn would make Final Fours, well, you would have probably been laughing and dismissive then, too. And by the way, Arkansas in the Mike Anderson era and the previous eras before that between Nolan Richardson, well, they weren't exactly knocking the cover off the ball. And yet somehow they found the right coach from the mid-major ranks, by the way, in Eric Musselman. And suddenly you got a team that's in the Elite Eight on the cusp of a Final Four. So why not Missouri? Why should any Missouri fan have a defeatist attitude about this sport? We've been there before, and we can get there again. And guess what? I'm not talking about the John Sunvold era. I'm not talking about the Doug Smith era. I'm not talking about decades ago when teenagers can't even remember what was happening. No, if you're 18 years old, actually you remember 10 years ago quite well. That Missouri team that lost to Norfolk State, yeah, as painful as that was, as embarrassing as that was, that team was spectacular to watch. And again, that one game, as much as that sullied that ending, that shows you the upside of this program. It's still there. This is college basketball. This isn't college football. For as great as Eli Drinkwitz has recruited for the last couple of years, even the last 2.5 cycles or so, it's going to take some time. You have 22 guys starting on total on both sides of the football. Well, guess what? In basketball, you only need 5. That's real simple math there, right? So let's not be so defeatist. We can turn this around quickly, as Dennis Gates has shown by getting an impact player already. Doesn't mean it's going to happen overnight. Doesn't mean it's going to happen this first season. But don't act like, oh, my God, it's impossible. Oh, my God, it's going to take 3 or 4 years. Frankly, by year 3 or 4, we should know pretty darn well if this Gates thing is going to work out. In modern college basketball, you're going to know much more quickly than you used to. The transfer portal, name, image, and likeness, people don't have to sit out anymore. Well, guess what? If Jordan Clarkson didn't have to sit out for Frank Haith's 2013 team, if Jabari Brown didn't have to sit out at all for that team, that would have totally changed the calculus. Suddenly, Frank Haith's strategy, sorry, I stumbled a little bit. I thought my dad was going to kill us. A little distracted here out on the road, people. But my point was, I think Frank Haith's strategy would have worked a lot better if people didn't have to sit out for a year every time you got transfers. So my point is, if you're a Missouri fan, hang in there, be optimistic. We just might turn this thing around a lot more quickly than you're expecting. So with all that being said, apologies to all of you out there on YouTube who are not getting a video version of this show, and thanks for making this your first listen anyway. But now, make your second listen Locked On the NFL Draft with Ryan Tracy, former NFL corner Eric Crocker. They bring the draft to life every weekday with college football prospects and NFL front offices, their analysis of both. It is free and available wherever you get your pods. Thanks for joining me on this unconventional episode and dealing with maybe a little bit lower audio quality than you're expecting, but you know what? I wanted to get something out for you anyway. So I appreciate you joining me, as always, right here on Locked On Mizzou.